Hey guys. So today for the quick recap, if you weren't able to come to the Zoom, we learned how can food be used for storytelling and connect to history. And so it started off with me talking about how the first time I ever went to visit my husband's family, and they all live in Oahu, for Christmas, just how different their Christmas meal was from mine. Like my family eats like ham and potatoes and green beans and rolls.
Very good potatoes.
Okay. And when I went to my husband's family, it was sushi and nori and kalua pig and octopus, and just totally different from me because it's a different place and a different culture. And so that's the story I always think about when I think about Spam fried rice and new food, is that first initial Christmas when I was meeting at the time. My husband was my boyfriend, meeting all of his family and this whole different food and culture for me. And so today we used, I taught people how to make a version of Spam fried rice. So here's our version, and we're going to eat for lunch. And so I'll give you the quick recap today. And we also used food and tied it into history, so you could see that food can actually be a way to learn history as well. So in a nutshell, because I want to make this a recap, in a nutshell, we really focus the history lesson around Spam. So if you have never eaten Spam before, because sometimes it gets a bad rap, Spam is a canned meat, and it started in about the mid to late 30s by Hormel. And it started during the Great Depression because it was cheap to produce. It was using, parts of the pig that people thought were undesirable, the pork shoulder, and then was easily able to be preserved. And initially ads were targeted towards like housewives, and then it frankly wasn't very popular. And then it didn't really globally take off until World War II because, again, easy to produce, cheap, and we needed it to feed troops, not just Allied troops.
It is canned food.
It is canned food, but like worldwide. And so now the only really different ingredient, you could buy different flavors and stuff, but really the only different ingredient is they added potato starch to help absorb the gelatin, which is kind of like the goo at the bottom.
Yucky part.
So if you've ever used Spam, you got to kind of squeeze it and shake it out, and it goes. So in World War II, it became this global product because of its cheap ability to produce it and then ship it across, of course, all over the world and stay good to feed troops. The other kind of interesting story we talked about was that Spam doesn't really stay particularly popular in mainland United States, but is still a really popular dish in Hawaii, Guam, and the Philippines, which were in the Pacific and connected to the United States. And so in Hawaii, for example, you can go to the McDonald's and the Burger King. They have Spam on their menus. But in particular, in World War II, after the attack on Pearl Harbor, which was in 1941, which was an attack on Oahu. I know we haven't gotten there yet. It was an attack on Pearl Harbor in Oahu, which was a naval base. The United States passed Executive Order 9066, which essentially allowed for the internment of people that were seen as national security threats. And so that largely meant Japanese Americans, but also could be Germans and Italians. And so for Hawaii, that was about 37,000 people in Hawaii that were either Japanese Americans or Japanese nationals. And so there were internment camps in Hawaii, but they also put sanctions and restrictions on fisheries that were Japanese owned. And so that also increased the popularity of Spam in Hawaii because of the closing down or sanctions of fisheries that were owned by Japanese Hawaiians or Japanese nationals. We have one of the biggest, not one of the biggest, but one of the largest sort of internment areas actually here in Texas called Crystal City. It's about 2 hours or so outside of San Antonio. And then in California as well. And essentially families who were American citizens of Japanese descent were forced from their homes with like one suitcase and required to live in these internment camps, which some call concentration camps, although that tends to have a different connotation. And were not essentially allowed to return home until the war effort was over. And in the 90s, I believe, the United States issued a formal apology, and really essentially 0 people that were interned during that time period were found guilty of espionage or spying against the United States. So it really is seen as a time of a violation of constitutional and civil rights during the United States history. But as a result, Spam still is very popular in Hawaii and Guam and the Philippines. And in the Nearpod, you learn about how the United States acquired Hawaii and the ethical issues that went into that acquisition, as far as the U.S. military being involved, the interest of sugar plantation owners in Sanford Dole, you might think about pineapples. And this also connects to your journal assignment for the day. So I'm going to pause for a second so I can change my screen. So for your journal entry, you're gonna have one assignment from me a week and a journal entry. And the journal entry goes along with your biology one. So it's cross-curricular. So it's actually less work for you because it counts for both your biology journal and for me. Same thing's happening with English, etc. So your journal entry, which I'll send out in a little bit, is this week you looked at how food can be connected to history and storytelling by learning how to make Spam fried rice. Looking at your food intake in your biology journal, what is your favorite dish of yours or in your family, and what story does it tell about your family and or in history? Do some of the ingredients have a history or a story to tell themselves? So similar to like what we did today, what's the story behind the dish for you and your family? And then can you pick an ingredient? Like for mine was Spam or carrots. We talked about carrots also. Yeah. And can you figure a little bit about the history of the ingredient and then also tell you why, and then also tell me why that dish maybe is so important to your family. You have the ability to either type your journal response, or what I would love is if you actually recorded your response in Flipgrid. You could show people how to make it. You could show them some of the ingredients, why it's so important to your family. So you have the choice of how you want to respond, whether you want to write right here or whether you want to include your Flipgrid link after you record. And in your biology journal, you'll just copy the prompt and your answer, whether it's the written response or the Flipgrid link, and you'll just copy and paste and put it into your biology journal, and you get to double dip. All right. I hope you guys learned a little bit of history, Great Depression, World War II, Executive Order 9066, and Japanese internment, and at the same time, learned how to make a little bit of fried rice. I will put a basic recipe link. It's not necessarily one that I use, but it's one that you can use if you choose to make it. And I hope that you guys liked a little different way to do history this week. It's really good to see all of your faces today and hear your voices. Bye-bye. And I will see you soon.
Bye-bye.